Hey everyone, Sophia here, my great challenger. Welcome back to my channel and a show and tell which was requested. I am going to talk to you about teacups and my teacup collection, which is relatively small compared to what other people's have. It's a whole world out there of teacup collectors. And if you like beautiful things and if you like history, you're in for a treat, because today not only am I going to talk about all of my teacups, but I'm also going to give you a history of the teacup, starting with the Tang Dynasty in China. This is modern, by the way. This is not an antique cup. I have some antiques and I have some very vintage teacups. Let's start with the history. Of course, tea comes from China. I think we all know that. So the teacup initially comes from China. Tang Dynasty is when, I'll put the dates right here on the screen, is when we can trace the teacup back. Probably came in earlier, but the oldest teacup out there available is from the Tang Dynasty. You all know that China invented porcelain and pottery thousands of years ago, and the teacup initially did not have any handle. It was actually just a regular cup. Didn't have a saucer either. It looked something like this. This is actually an antique Chinese cup. This one is from the Qing Dynasty. It's not very old. I would say maybe 120 to 150 years old. So the Chinese teacups looked something like this. The Japanese had something very similar that looked more something like this. This is also an antique Japanese cup. So you'll see that they have no handle. So one of the stories out there is that the British are the ones who invented the handle. Actually, that is not true. The Chinese invented the handle. There was a whole period of time where teacups, such as this one, started having double handle. They realized that the tea was oftentimes too hot to handle, and they created little handles to drink your tea. Very similar to what would be referred to today as a bouillon cup. What the British did invent, though, is the saucer, and that came in around the 1700s, so 18th century. They started with saucers. Let's take this one from Maddox, which is not really old, but if you look at this teacup, which is a regular shape, nothing, super fancy. The pattern on this is Indian tree. When the tea is too hot, it needs a place where the heat can disperse. So you would put a saucer underneath it, and the heat from the cup would disperse into the saucer, and it would allow you to cool your tea much faster. One of the fashions of the time, which was very popular amongst the royal court of Russia, was to actually drink the tea from the saucer, a practice that we no longer do, which is actually today, I believe, considered to be quite rude. So when you look at very old teacups, I'm going to look at this Chelsea right here, this Royal Chelsea. You're going to start seeing teacups that are more like soup bowls, right, compared to more flat versions like this one. And that is because people would pour the tea in the saucer and drink the tea directly from the saucer. This was a Russian thing that caught up in all of Europe and then eventually phased out. So the British invented the saucer. What they perfected was the porcelain. So when you look at, and I don't have any fine Chinese antique porcelain, but when you look at the majority of the antiques coming out of China, they are very, very fine, almost translucent, and of course, very fragile. The handle was actually making them even more fragile. So there was a need for what we refer to now as hard paste porcelain, and that was created by none other than Joshua Spode out of England in the mid to late 1700. So what he created was bone china, And bone china, also referred to today as fine bone china, they're pretty much the same. It's just a marketing thing. The bone china is your regular porcelain to which they added ground bone, animal bone. So vegetarians out there, I am sorry to let you know that bone china contains animal bones, and it's primarily oxen or cow bones. They had a very specific recipe, and their recipe clearly stated that it had to be oxen or cow because any other animal had a porous bone and it was not hard enough. So they mixed their clay with the fine powdered bone, and that created hard paste. With the invention of hard paste porcelain, they were now able to make teacups that were thinner, less fragile, and could have a handle. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people believe that the British invented the handle on teacups. They did not. They were already in existence in China, but they perfected the method. So now you have teacups with a handle. So now that we have hard paste porcelain with handles and saucers and a massive import of tea towards the British Islands, guess what happened? Teacups started to be a major item for export and for everyday use. So now we are in the late 1700s, beginning of the 1800s, and pretty much all of the teacups coming out of England have a saucer and a handle, and they are bone china. Of course, some of them are still porcelain, semi-vitreous porcelain or earthenware, but the bone china were the quality china that high society would use. So they come in different shapes and they come in different patterns. Now, the majority of your teacup, you know from your own, if you have one, personal 5-piece setting that came with either your wedding china or your grandma's china. I'm going to show you mine. So this is your typical fine bone or regular bone china. 5-place setting. This one is Royal Albert. It's the Old Country Roses, which by the way is the most sold and most continuous pattern in the world. It was created in 1963. So each place setting came with its own teacup, which can double as a coffee cup. And this one is a Monroe's shape. An earlier example would be this Mado china from Japan. This one is from the 1940s. You can see it's a totally different shape, and it's Japanese porcelain, so it's a little bit thinner and lighter and probably more translucent. Let's look at it in the light. You can see that, right? Let's not forget the French Havilland and, of course, Limoges and Sèvres were some of the biggest competitors for both Wedgwood and Spode. And this is the 60th anniversary. It doesn't have an actual name, it's a Schleiger number. And this is from 1923. And you can see flat bottom, very simple teacup, but even more translucent than the Japanese set. A little bit more modern. This is Noritake. You can see definitely from the shape and the design, the thickness, that this is a more modern set. This one is more from the 70s, late 70s, very early 1980s. But these are the teacups that came with a place setting. They were part of an entire set with the soup tureen and the vegetable dish, the plates, the platters, you name it. But teacups are also a collector's item. And those companies like Spode, Wedgwood, Royal Chelsea, Shelley, Paragon started making teacups solely for the purpose of collecting. So when people want to collect teacups, it's kind of difficult to figure out what it is that you're looking for. Do you want to collect a particular brand? Do you want to collect a particular time period? Do you want to collect a particular shape? Or do you want to collect a particular style? It's up to you. I have a little bit of everything, and this is what I'm going to show you today. So I don't know if I want to do them from the oldest to the youngest, but let's start with this one because it might be one of my oldest one. And you can see that The saucer is more of a bowl, right? You remember they were drinking the tea from the cups. This is an absolute gorgeous pattern. This one is from Wood and Son out of England. This is not bone china. This is just regular porcelain. It's not super fine, but the pattern is absolutely gorgeous. And it's from the late 1800s. Look at the inside. This is actually what's referred to as a transferware, meaning that they take a pattern that is printed on some kind of paper, and then that pattern is added to the ceramic. And once they apply a particular compound, I cannot tell you what it is, so much for education today, right? What happens is that it leaves an imprint, and at firing, that particular imprint turns a specific color. So obviously the cobalt blue here indicates that we had cobalt powder, and this is how you get that pattern. This one is called English Scenery. And let's look at the back a little bit. It has a whole bunch of stuff written on it. And right here it says Enoch 1782, that's when they started, right? This handle here is very similar to what you would see in earlier spode. So let's look at shapes, because there's so many different types of shape. We have the dainty shape, which is probably the most famous of the shapes. You can't miss it. It has this scalloped ruffle type pattern. This was created by Shelley, and this one you can see that it's also more of a dainty shape with the little scallop, but look at the foot on this. So you can get footed teacups like this one. How about this? When we talk about footed teacups, these are actually coming from Japan. Look at that. These are literally feet. How cute. And then you would get something called or referred to as the flat bottom. So this would be a flat bottom. This is a Rosenthal Sans Souci Diplomat. It's more like a demi-tasse actually. But you see there's no feet, it's a flat bottom. So before I show you all of my teacups, and then we can look at them in details in regards to the particular design and stamps, back stamps. What is the ideal shape? What is the ideal shape for a teacup? Is it something like this? Is it something like this? Or is it something like this, which could be my favorite? All right, so what you want in a teacup is several things. One, you want the tea aroma to be able to be released. So you want a teacup that is smaller at the bottom and flared towards the top. You want a large surface. One of the reasons why the Russian court and the British initially enjoyed drinking tea from the saucer was that all of the aroma from the tea would actually be released because of the surface. It was large, it would cool down, and you'd be able to really smell. So you don't want something that is restricted. So the last thing you want is drink a tea out of a mug, which I'm literally doing right now, because this is too small and you don't really get to enjoy the aroma of your tea. So you want something that is smaller at the bottom and very large at the top. You also want a lip, what's referred to as the lip, to be fluted or fanning out. So if I show you this Japanese teacup, for instance, it has what you want. It's shorter at the bottom, it's wider at the top, but it's a straight lip. If you look at this Shelley here, which is really one of the perfect teacup shape, you're going to see this tapering right here. And that is what you want. You not only want the tapering, you also want the edges to be curved. And the reason why you want this is so that when you drink your tea, you're not supposed to slurp it. The tea is supposed to roll into your mouth. So you want a teacup that has this flare right here if you're a purist, okay? I'm not a tea snob. I'm just telling you what I know. you want this to be flared and this to be a little bit curved so that your tea flows into your mouth. So this right here, technically, with the foot, to keep the heat inside the cup, that's what the foot is for, right? Not just for stability, but the heat is going to basically get concentrated here and it will keep the tea hot. It's smaller at the bottom, it is flared, so you have a larger opening here, and it's also tapered and curved. This is a Shelley crochet, and if you remember, I had two. I sold one on my Etsy shop, and then I kept the yellow one. So let's look at the back stamp of Teacups to see what kind of information you can get from your teacup when you find it at the thrift store, at your antique mall, and you need to do a little bit of research. So we were looking at Shelley. Let's look at the back stamp. What you're going to see, of course, is the mark, and very often the provenance. So you get Shelley, England, and then you'll get other information, bone china, fine bone china, and then you'll get numbers. These numbers are the pattern, and they are usually handwritten by the person who finished the cup. In this case, that would be the person who added the gold, because that's hand painted on the cup. So your saucer would have pretty much the same thing, and then you notice that there's a number, a slash, and another number. That's basically the number in the series, and then you would get a little number sometimes right here that could be attributed to either the color pattern, like this particular Shelley cup series, the crochet series, came in different colors. There was a pink background, a green background, a blue one. I have the what is that, pale yellow background, so that could be that as well, or it could very well be just the number of the person who painted those. So let's look at this Royal Chelsea here, which is quite old. This is one of the earlier Royal Chelsea. The company started in 1912. I actually have two of those, but both of them have different markings. This one is one of the earliest marking. So what you're gonna see on it is Golden Rose, so that's the name. You have the company's logo with the anchor, Royal Chelsea, English bone china, made in England. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any Paragon cup. Imagine that. But if I had one, I would be able to show you something that's very often at the bottom of a majority of the high-end pieces coming out of England, is you would see the crest of the Windsor crest for the royal family of England, and it would say, by appointment of Her Majesty the Queen, and depending on the Queen. So those where particular companies, like Paragon for instance, would have issued specific patterns that were destined strictly to the royal family, and then eventually they issued them to the public. So you would see, by appointment to Her Majesty the Queen, written on it. Matter of fact, and I'll put the link down below, when Windsor Castle went up in flame, I can't remember when that was, but I think it might have been 1992 or something like this. In the 90s, there was a fund, a trust fund that was created to help pay for the repair. You would see on the back of it, it would say trust with the coat of arms on it. These particular teacups are reissues of specific patterns that were created for Queen Victoria, Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth. So if you want to get involved in that, I'll put the link down below. Let's look at teacups. You have the tiny ones like this, right? This is more of a demi-tasse. I am still looking, by the way, for the actual size. And then you have massive one. Massive one like this. This is a Royal Copenhagen. This is actually called a breakfast teacup, because in England you have your regular tea, you have high tea, you have the afternoon, the evening tea, and then you have breakfast tea. Breakfast tea is generally bigger as a cup. So we're gonna look at this one, which is not very old. For all of them, I'll put the name and the dates underneath it. And this one is Royal Copenhagen, Denmark. It is signed, it is marked, it has the logo, it's got the numbers and everything. It's a beautiful cup. It's very thick, it's very heavy. Look at this, paneled with the gold. I'm gonna hold it like this so you can see what it looks like from the top, right? Beautiful teacup. So this is your breakfast teacup. This is heavy, this is large. It allows you to pour quite a nice cup of tea. This is more like a little bit over 8 ounces. Not too long ago, I fell in love with Rosenthal Diplomat. And Rosenthal is interesting, it's, you know, Germany. Rosenthal is interesting because the majority of their cups have the exact same shape. This is what they refer to as the sans souci shape. So you're gonna see it with different pattern, but this particular one is called Diplomat. And I absolutely fell in love with the pattern. It is very expensive, like really, really expensive. It's gold, very Baroque, right, in terms of the design. So the gold is hand painted, the flowers are a transferware, has the mark Rosenthal in the back, and it says, I believe, Rosenthal Sans Souci, and this is the ivory one. But let's look at the cup. Now, I am still looking. And by the way, you may not know that, but I am very patient. I have faith that one day I will find it. So I am not going online. I could go online and buy it, but I want to find it in the wild, okay? And it will take me 10 years perhaps. I'm fine with that. That's part of collecting. So here's the cup. And of course, you know, the larger one is pretty much exactly the same, but you would have perhaps a little bit more flour. Look at this perfect little cup. And again, this is more like a demi-tasse, but one of my favorite thing when it comes to teacups is the peekaboo flower or the flowers on the inside. It is absolutely stunning. If your grandma had the Rosenthal Diplomat and you were thinking, I don't know if I want this china, it's not very attractive, it is very passé and old-fashioned, I want you to know that this is perhaps one of the most expensive china out there. I did not pay nowhere near that, okay? I got it for $19 on Whatnot. But this one is about $95 just for this little tiny thing right here. So if you go on the Facebook Marketplace, you're going to see people selling the entire service. Don't be surprised if they sell the entire service for $5,000 because the Diplomat from Rosenthal is perhaps their best china pattern. So anyway, I'm still looking for the larger one, which could very well be a breakfast teacup. This one I showed you earlier, this is Maddock, England. I believe I have the coffee cup still available on my Etsy shop. The pattern is Indian tree, which is a chinoiserie pattern, which you know was very popular in the 1700s. So they reissued this. This is not very old. They reissued this sometimes around the 1950s. This is the very same pattern, and this one is referred to as the Greek key pattern. So you can see the Greek key on the rim right here, right? And they had different ones where the Greek key was all gold, or the Greek key, this one is gold with some black. They had one that was all green, I believe. And it's a very nice pattern, very old-fashioned, not bone china. This is more like earthenware. It's a little bit more rustic in terms of its quality, but you notice, right? So what happened is that they're not the same. I found about maybe 8 or so of those at the store, at the thrift store, and literally each one of them was different. So it was somebody who was collecting them and grabbing every piece and they could find, and didn't really care whether the stamps were matching. It doesn't bother me either, but the ones in the shop are matching, just so you know. So yeah, this is a very nice shape. It's smaller at the bottom, larger on the top. It's got the little flare here and the curvature that you need. So the shape is perhaps perfect just as well, but it's not a high quality teacup. The pattern itself though is beautiful. If you like chinoiserie, may I recommend that you go and get yourself some Indian tree by Maddock, England. So here's the chalet, which actually was gifted to me. And it was my first chalet and I love it for several reasons. The flowers and then of course the design on the inside. So this is again perfect shape. You have a foot that retains the heat. It's smaller at the bottom, larger on top. It's got the curvature here and the tapering. Let's look at it a bit closer. This one is Chalet Duchess, number 13402. Okay, Chalet Duchess. Let's look at the saucer first. And your teacups can be very intricate, right? Some people really like what's referred to as chintz porcelain. I'll put a picture right here so you can see what chintz is. There's basically no blank. This would be considered a blank. Oh God, it's stunning. I love this teacup. Let's look at the cup. This one is interesting because you see it's got little notches, right? So here are the flowers, little bouquet on one side, repeat on the other, nice foot, gold trim, right? The handle is a little bit higher. At the end, I'll tell you how to display and store your teacups, okay? Because I'm seeing some horrors on the internet. And look at the inside. Oh. Should I tell you a little bit about the chalet history? So I know I'm all over the place, but when I come back, I'm going to tell you about chalet history and why chalet teacups are the most collected, with Paragon, are the most collected teacups out there and why they are so expensive. Because one of these could easily fetch $150 online. Let's talk about chalet a little bit. Why is a teacup like this, which is absolutely stunning from chalet, right, is double the price of the Royal Doulton from the same time period? They are equally good. Both of them have superb quality. They're very well-known brand. But chalet is very collected and chalet can be very expensive. There's a very good reason for that. And again, go online, go find out how much a chalet teacup is. I'm telling you, some of them are over $150. Chalet did not exist for a very long time, but the biggest problem is when the factory closed, and I think it was in 1962. I'll put the real date right here. I'm so prepared. Anyway, when the factory closed, it stayed empty for a couple of years, and then they bulldozed the whole thing. When they went at it with the wrecking ball and the bulldozer, they destroyed the entire stock that was still in the factory, and they also destroyed all of the sketches and the formulas. So whatever chalet teacup is out there right now, whether it's this Duchess right here or it's this crochet, this is it. I'm not the only one who has it. Other people have them. But what I'm trying to tell you is that there is no stock. Whatever is in the wild, that's it. You can't go to the company and say, hey, I lost my chalet crochet in yellow. Do you have it in stock? Chalet no longer exists. Not only that, their stock was destroyed. So they are unbelievably rare. And people who have chalet teacups, they tend to hang on to them. If you go to your Goodwill or you go to your regular antique mall and you find a chalet teacup in good condition, and they're asking for like $6.99, please run, okay? Because it's an investment. It's not $1 million investment, I get it, but if you collect, you know what I'm talking about. So we looked at this one, and now we're gonna look at this chalet teacup. Very similar shape, pretty much exactly the same shape with the handle a little bit higher than the rim. And this one is crochet because it has a lace pattern. So you can see right here the lace pattern on it, right? This is very intricate. I mean, this is a lot of work in the design. And again, this particular crochet collection, they had them with different backgrounds. So people who collected Shelley or who collected this particular pattern would have them or have at least one in each color. This is what it looks like from the top with its salsa. Isn't it absolutely glorious? This is a gorgeous teacup. Okay, let's go back to Royal Doulton, because Royal Doulton is interesting. Shelley didn't do just their own design. Shelley was also manufacturing teacups and porcelain for other companies, one of them being Royal Doulton. So here is a Royal Doulton that uses a Shelley dainty design, and it was probably manufactured by the Shelley factory. The Monrose shape that I showed you earlier with the Old Country Roses was the very first Monrose shape that was created for Royal Doulton by Shelley and is now known as the Royal Doulton shape, that Monrose kind of like melon shape. I'll put a picture right here so you can see it. So this one right here is a dainty shape. It's manufactured and designed by Shelley for Royal Doulton, and it is a gorgeous teacup. It's actually one of my latest edition. This one is called Forget Me Not. Forget Me Not. So if you look at the back, Royal Albert, Bone China, England, Forget Me Not. It is a stunning cup. Initially I was going to put it up for sale, but no. So here's your dainty shape, very, very recognizable from Shelley. And peekaboo flowers, which again is my favorite. It's a gorgeous teacup. Okay, it is a gorgeous teacup. Could very well be one of my favorite. I have so many, it's hard to choose. Please comment below, by the way. Let me know which one's your favorite. Look at this one. This one I got on Whatnot, and I have to admit, I paid a little bit for it, okay? I didn't get it for $7. Look at how ornate this particular handle is. Look at how they decorated the foot, fluted here, curved. It's a gorgeous teacup. And this one is Royal Albert Bone China, number 2766. It's a different stamp at the bottom, so I don't know what to tell you about that. Here's the salsa. It's 24 karat gold. And let's look at the cup. This is so intricate. So they have the frieze right here, and they have a repeat of the pattern there. They have a repeat of the pattern on the rim, and then you have your flowers here at the bottom. Oh. See, you can't be sloppy when you drink out of a cup like this. You hold a piece of elegance. You can only, for some reason, straighten up and hold your head high and oh, by the way, this, no, okay, you keep this down. You just feel elegant when you use a piece of china like this. It is gorgeous. Possibly one of my favorites, but it's also because it's the very first one I purchased for myself. This is Regency Bone China, which is also a British company. Look at this. Let me show it to you from the top. Look at this. So this one's a little bit different. It's much wider, right? You can see that. It's a shorter cup. It's semi-translucent. It's gorgeous. Pistachio green, scalloped edges, 24 karat gold. Here's the logo in the back, and here's the cup. This is perfection. And it's not that it's not a popular brand. Regency is a known brand, but it's not one of those brands that comes to mind when people think teacup. Usually people say Shelley, Paragon, Royal, Chelsea. They don't necessarily think Regency, right? Gorgeous. Oh. So yes, this could very well be my favorite. It's somewhat similar to that in terms of colors, but you can see, right? Look at the difference in shapes, in form, everything. So if you want to collect teacups, know that, you know, again, some people collect for shapes, some people collect for flowers. I think I have a thing for flowers. It's kind of established by now, but I also like those peekaboo flowers. Let's go back to Royal Chelsea. I have two of those. One of them I purchased online, and then the other one actually came from Scott's grandmother. She only had one, and it's this one right here. The other one has a different stamp at the bottom. It may have been a later version of it. Royal Chelsea, another company that was really, really big in England. Look at this opulence, over the top teacup. This predates Old Country Roses. It's got this Victorian flair to it. It's called Golden Rose, right? Royal Chelsea with the anchor, and look at the inside. And so this one, perfect shape, wider on top, curved. I mean, hello. Let's compare it to Old Country Roses because I believe this was the inspiration. So here's the famous Old Country Roses, which is my wedding china. And here's Royal Chelsea Golden Rose. All right. Oh, they go very well together because they're the same color. This one, over the top. This one, oh, that's the more rose shape again. What can I say? I love this pattern. So when I come back, we're going to talk about Nippon. So let's talk about Nippon, Japan. Nippon was China that was pretty much made for export. And it started around Victorian time, early Victorian times. So there was a lot of Nippon that was sold exclusively through the Sears catalog. So you would go, think Little House on the Prairie, right? You go to the general store, there would be a big, large catalog on the counter, and you could purchase a tea set or, you know, your regular china, and it would come from Japan. There was a lot of companies that ended up coming to the United States. The Moriyama brothers, for instance, were one of them, and then eventually they became Noritake, where making their porcelain here in the United States, sending it to Japan to have it hand painted, and then it would be sent back to the United States and it would be dispatched to, you name your state, where people would purchase those. So here's an example of Nippon, and this is Mori Mori Nippon. And you're going to see a European shape, but you're going to see definitely a Japanese design or a Japanese or Oriental flair to it. And I'm showing it to you on the not so pretty side. I have the whole tea set from this. So the interesting thing about Nippon is that it is Japanese porcelain, so it's super thin. It is so delicate. And this one is actually what they refer to as lusterware. So you can see this pearlescence, right? Can you see how transparent this is, right? You can see the whole design through. You can definitely see the Asian Oriental flair to it, right? This is raised. It's what's called mouriage. So the mouriage, they would either do little dots or they would, this is all hand painted. They would paint the outline with a thicker gold paint, and it would give you this raised pattern. So here's the saucer, absolutely stunning. So here's another Nippon that's totally different, and they took a lot of liberties with their design during the 1940s, 50s, and during the early 20th century. This is a footed one. I am not a big fan of those, but I think that the pattern, which looks like some kind of dogwood, is absolutely stunning. And again, this is pretty much transparent. You can see it from here, but it is such a pretty pattern. I have about 6 of those in my other curio. So here's another example of a very unusual shape for a teacup with feet. Okay, I had no idea when I purchased this. I saw the bottom, I was like, is this Dresden? There's no way I am finding a Dresden teacup at the Goodwill. Well, I did. Okay, Dresden, which you know is by far, is like the Sèvres of Germany. It's higher end, I think, that Royal Copenhagen, if you ask me. So here's Dresden. I only have one, but it's in perfect condition. So Grandma obviously had a collection of teacups, because I found a bunch of teacups that day, and nobody wanted the teacups, and they ended up at the Goodwill. And I just happened to be there at the right time. So you can recognize the brand by the 2 crossing swords in the back. This is a treasured possession right there. It's a beautiful teacup. Okay, and my last one, before I go, because I know I've talked a lot, is the last one I got, and I got it for my birthday. So here's something interesting, because it's the perfect shape for a teacup. It has everything you need in a teacup, right? Again, large bottom, it's curved, it's got a little flare, it's smaller, it's got a foot to retain the heat. But this is actually made by an English company for Disney. And it's the Alice in Wonderland collection. And they have the whole series, okay? You can get the one with the rabbit, you can get the one with Alice in the middle of it. And then you can get the one with the Red Queen, which obviously you all know is my favorite Disney characters. So now these are quite expensive, okay? They are from the English Ladies Company. They still make them today. They can be quite expensive because they are under the Disney label, so you know. But if you go on Amazon, it's just about half price if you go on Amazon. So it's all gold, and it has all the characters, right? From Alice in Wonderland. But I wanted, so Scott bought it for me for my birthday. I wanted the one with the Red Queen. So the English Ladies Company does a very good job, because they know what the perfect shape is in a teacup. And on top of that, they're giving you the old-fashioned saucer, which is the saucer that's more like a soup bowl, where you could drink from the saucer. So I'm concluding my video with this particular teacup, because this is the epitome. Don't forget about the pattern, okay? The pattern may not be yours, but if you're looking for a teacup, this is the shape, and this is the saucer that you want, all right? And I will conclude on how to store them. I have seen a lot of people have sent this to me via Instagram or PMs, when you have teacups from your service, right, from your China, where I see them nesting the teacups like this, one into the other, and they're making a circle over a plate, right? Please, for the love of everything Holly, don't do that, okay? Number one, that's not how museums store their teacups, okay? So if you ever want to know how museums store teacup, you can ask them, or you can find that online, and absolutely no way are they doing that. Why do you not want to do that? Because you're putting pressure on the rim. You're putting pressure on the rim, and you're scratching the inside, and as you move your garland or wreath of cups, this shifting that happens, you are risking to damage your handle. Please do not do that, okay? The proper way, if you do not have a teacup that has a handle that's higher, okay, let's find one. The proper way would be to do something like this, where you put one rim, you put one saucer over the teacup like this, and you just put one. You don't want to do more than 2, Okay, so that would be one way. The other way, if your teacup has a handle that is higher than the rim, this one is not the case, right? So this, I could technically, if I had a lot, I could store them like this. But again, I am putting friction on my rim. I'm damaging the gold. It may not show right away, but over time it will. So if you have one that's higher like this, right? This is how you store it. Please don't store them like this, okay? So if you have several ones, what you would do is that very easily, I'm getting hot, okay? Very easily, you go and you get yourself coffee filters. You put a coffee filter on your plate. You put your saucer on it, okay? And then if you want to put another cup, you put a coffee filter right here and you insert one more cup like this. But the coffee filter will protect the paint and the gold. So you can stack up to 2 or 3 like this. But that's really the only proper way to store your teacup from your china set. Do not purchase those china containers that are like quilted fabric thing. These don't breathe. They have plastic interior. They trap moisture and they will damage your china. The absolute best way if you have a collection is to get a teacup stand. So this is a very cheap version of the teacup stand. You can get it in wood. You can get the one where there's an arm with a hook where you hang the teacup from. I would not personally purchase those either. Why? Because you are putting pressure on your handle. So the best way, if you're going to display teacups, is to have the cup like this, and you put, and these, by the way, move back and forth, okay, depending on the shape of your saucer. And then you have your saucer, let's put it in the proper orientation. You put your saucer like this, okay? This is how you display teacup and saucer. It doesn't have to be an expensive base. You can buy the plastic ones like this, they come in sets. But again, don't get the one where you hang the teacup, because the weight of the teacup eventually will put too much pressure on your handle. That's if you care for your stuff, okay? I know I'm not careful with the majority of my belongings, but the things that I collect, I am very careful with, because I guess they are important to me. So you tell me down below, and I hope I gave you enough tidbits and history and information, either verbally or in little inserts. I tried to make this not necessarily entertaining, but informative, and maybe I've inspired you to pay a closer attention to Grandma's teacup collection, and maybe I inspired you to start your own. You know, you don't have to keep all of your teacup. You can sell them, you can, you know, donate them until you find the right mix that you want, or, you know, the specific theme. Clearly my theme is the flowers. I love anything floral. So you tell me down below which one is your favorite. And since I've looked at all of my teacups one more time today, I just have to say the Regency is still my favorite. Don't get me wrong, absolutely adore this one by Royal Albert, and of course I love the Red Queen, but this to me is the epitome of the perfect teacup. Okay, that Regency one, which is not an obscure brand, it's just not a brand that comes to mind when it comes to teacup. It's beautiful. Okay, so there you go. This was my show and tell for the teacups. I hope you enjoyed this, and perhaps you want me to do more show and tell, because this house is packed with various collections. You can't see it from here, but there's the Madonnas over there. There's collections of crystal, collections of various vases. I've started a collection of antiques, yes, antique Chinese bowls. So I will leave you at that with the earliest one and the newest one. This is 200 years in the making of the history of the teacup. So thumbs up if you like it, subscribe right in the corner if you don't want to miss another video, in particular another show and tell video. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at My Great Challenge. My Etsy shop, Frenchy and Tubby, I currently have teacups, vintage teacups for sale. The link is down below on Etsy and Patreon if you're interested in a subscription-based exclusive content not shared on YouTube. The link is down below as well. Don't forget to tell me in the comment section which one is your favorite and if I inspired you to pay a closer look at your grandma's teacup collection. Thank you for watching. Bye!